So during this period, we're going to be looking at a number of things, building on some of the, like, what are the lessons that we've learned over the last 10.5 months, nearly 11. Can you believe that we're nearly a year into kind of this global pandemic? It's also a celebration. Some of the efforts that have been underway in our parishes are absolutely amazing. And the differences as well should be celebrated, because there isn't one size fits all. It shouldn't, it doesn't necessarily have to be online streaming. It doesn't have to be live streaming. There are just so many different models that are working for your local communities. So we're hoping to give a bit of a showcase of some of those that are out there. And then hopefully it's a chance to walk away and say, I might try that. I might give that a go. What I've heard today, that might be quite easy to redo. And just to feel a bit more energized around it, because I know you have all been working so hard for so long, and it can feel like it's relentless. So hopefully this will give you some quick tips to sort of get through the next period. I'm going to hand over to Amy and Emma for most of it. Amy's going to be leading a panel looking at lessons learnt, technologies used, different practices across. And then Emma's going to be talking to a panel about how we engage all different ages. So from a 5-year-old to a 95-year-old, what will float their boat and what will get them engaged with what they're seeing online. And then we'll finish with a Q&A. So if you do have any questions throughout, put them in the chat and we can pick them up at the end. So sort of before we start, I'm just going to do a small prayer and then we'll kick off. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for everyone gathered here, for enabling us this time and this opportunity to share and learn and listen to one another. Thank you that you know each of us by name and that you continue to walk alongside us. As this webinar progresses, we seek your clarity, your peace. We ask that you open our ears so that we may hear your voice, open our minds that we may receive your eternal wisdom, and open our spirits so that we may know your leading and guidance. We know that you are with us and for us, and we seek your counsel. May the work that we do and the way that we do it bring joy and hope to the communities that we serve. Through Jesus we pray. Amen. And I hand over to Amy.
Hello. In our previous online worship webinar, we discussed a few different things, who our community is, how we might serve them. The brilliant Philip Ellis shared some of his wisdom around technology and how we can use that to deliver online worship. For this webinar, I've asked different representatives from various different churches to come and share what they've actually been doing. It's 10 months later and we've all learned a lot and everything looks different for each church. So let me introduce you to our panelists. Panelist number 1 is Becky Speyer. She is the youth worker at Frimley Parish Church, and they have been doing a brilliant job, and they were using what they had to hand. It started off with just using a phone, and have really been brilliant with that. Panelist number 2 is Simon Taylor he's the vicar at Busbridge and Hambledon Church in Godalming, and the church caters for different traditions, from a contemporary service to a more traditional service, and they're also looking at taking digital church further and what that might look like. And the third church today that we have representatives from are David Grundy, who's the vicar at Holmbury St Mary, and he has brought along Francis, who I am told is the digital king, and who just makes things happen. And they have transformed parts of their website to offer a self-service service, along with other online activities for their congregation. So I'm going to start off by asking a question. Simon, we'll come to you first. tell us about what you offer online and why you've chosen to offer that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Amy. Yeah, so we offer, as an oversight sort of overview, we offer a traditional BCP, Book of Common Prayer service, every week online on YouTube. We also offer something called Contemporary, which is called Conversations on the Couch, which is very informal. Think Last Leg or Graham Norton and the couch is outside, come rain or shine. We then offer, and that's YouTube hybrid, so YouTube live and pre-recorded together. Then we do something for young people once a month on Zoom, a youth service, very inclusive for young people. And there's a whole bunch of worship things in the week that you're probably used to: morning prayer, evening prayer, compline, things like that. We then also do some occasional outreach, evangelism type discipleship, extension worship on YouTube as well, turning things into stories and using narrative.
And the same question to you, David.
Right. Well, first of all, I'm a technophobe, so that might encourage one or two people. And I've been kind of dragged into technology by Francis and Liz. Particularly Liz started it off. Liz, why don't you tell us actually how you started what you did? That might be a good kickoff.
We actually started off doing something very similar, and it's become richer and more diverse, but the actual model for what we're doing has remained more or less the same. So I'll share the screen. And basically what we do is we already had a website, but it was a bit moribund, and it had out-of-date dates on it, and it had links that didn't work anymore, and it had a whole load of rubbish that somebody dumped some media onto an actual published page and all sorts of stuff like that. And so we kind of took it and shook it and created a much more engaging homepage with messages that change frequently, a message consistently from David, a very beautiful prayer that we're all using in the parish, and all sorts of extras, like there's a page for online prayer. But the service itself is offered as like an order of service, and it's both interactive and static, and changes obviously every week. And we're running the online services every week, irrespective of whether or not we're running a service in the church, and we are at the moment running services in the church as well. And so what you get is a service for the Sunday, but it's available at any time through the whole week, from about Saturday morning, late morning, before the Sunday that it's a service for, right through to the following weekend. So people can access it when they want and where they want. It isn't a live streamed thing, and it contains video, and this is Francis's speciality, is putting, well, the whole thing is Francis puts together, but actually knitting the single voices of our choir together to make an anthem sound. Prayers that are read by members of the congregation, and so they record them on their phones and send them through to Francis, who puts them up on the website. I mean, I can give you examples if you want, but I'm conscious of time, so we can come back to that if you really, or I can give you the link. That would be more useful, wouldn't it? You can then play. And bringing in visitors from our neighbouring parish here, one of our organists talking about it, his inspiration as a Christian, and so on. So it's basically a service with an order of service, which is what I'm scrolling through now for you, and prayers. And we've found that putting the text in beside the recording of the prayers helps some people who maybe aren't hearing so well, and they, in any case, use the text in a different way, perhaps coming back to it to pray again. And then we've got our area dean doing the blessing this week. And importantly, I'm now the treasurer, so I've managed to go online with online donations, and you can even donate to church funds, or make a special collection. We've done that obviously for remembrance and for the various Christmas appeals that we've had. So I will stop sharing because I don't want to use up all the time, but That's what we've been doing, inspired really by our model in the church, but trying to translate it into something meaningful online.
I mean, I think one way of looking at it is, I agree with everything Liz has said, it's good to look at what you can do with that you cannot do in church, or you cannot do with live streaming. So one of the things we've tried to do recently is get people who used to worship here but have moved away to do a reading. And that really sort of warms people to hear their voice again. Or people who have helped to in previous interregnums, clergy, to give a blessing or give an introduction or something. So I think actually engaging people from beyond the congregation or the present community is something that you can't do in live worship, but you can with this.
That's brilliant. And if we go to you, Becky?
What we've offered depends on where we're at in the lockdown restrictions process. So we have jumped between live streaming onto YouTube what happens in church when we've been in church, and we did that very simply, as Amy said at the start. We went with what have we got, what can we use, and so we found an app that turned a mobile phone into a webcam that then linked to YouTube. We didn't have any whizzy programs, it just went straight into YouTube and we did it through there. Then when we've been in lockdown and we've not been in church, we've been pre-recording services. So different members of clergy have recorded different bits, members of the congregation have recorded readings and prayers, and then they've all been edited together and uploaded to YouTube on a Sunday, and then they sit on the YouTube channel from the day they're uploaded onwards. So they don't have to be watched at 10 o'clock on Sunday. They are frequently watched all through the week. And the longer we're online, it seems the further we're reaching. And like David said with his congregation, we found that people that have moved away have really enjoyed being able to re-engage through the fact that we're now online and everything reaches a bit further.
What have you learning?
The big thing I learnt from a live streaming point of view was that the more simple I could keep it, the easier it was to teach other people how to do it, so that it doesn't fall to me every single week. I tried to get clever after a Zoom very similar to this and thought, oh, well, lots of other people are using this clever program, so I'm going to give that a go and see if it works better. And there are a lot of pros to using it. I find it gives me greater control over what goes out, but it's quite techy. And so if you're trying to teach someone in the congregation who has a rough idea what they're doing, but they're not overly techy, the more complex it got, the more people stepped back and said, no, sorry, that's too much for me. I don't want that responsibility. So actually I've learned that I can involve more people in the process by keeping it as simple as possible.
Yeah, our biggest learning curve has been a bit like Becky saying, that you do need other people. And we started with a very small team, and we realised that we were burning them out. So we've had to simplify rather than keep doing all spangly stuff, and actually do something that is sustainable. And I think sustainability is the key. So one of the things we did with the BCP online, we were live streaming that on YouTube, and then we discovered that not many, you may all be doing it, apologise if you are, but we discovered that not many people were pre-recording BCP. So we did a recording, and the way we did it to simplify, to make it sustainable, is we have a couple of clergy here, but also some retired people and then SM and so on. And we also borrowed a couple of LLMs and some good eggs from the congregation. And we recorded them. And we said, record the whole of Matins, just read it, with your phone. And then we cut it up. And then we created, from that one thing from a number of people, we created a number of different stories or different services, all done in one go, but they all look very different. And we simply revolve them round. And do you know what? After 8 weeks, nobody remembers who went when. So and all we do is we drop a pre-recorded 4-minute homily in, that's different. So we made it sustainable. So that's, I think the key thing for me is sustainability.
I like that. I think I was trying to get what Simon said, that he gets sort of 8 different people to read out matins, then someone collates it, and on a given Sunday's offering, you've got different of those 8 doing different bits of the service. Is that right?
That's exactly it. So basically, I read the whole of matins. You can get me doing the opening prayer or the collect, and then someone else doing the next one. And you've basically got 8 stories created, which you can revolve.
What do you do for responses?
They're all on there. It's all pre-typed on the screen for people. So the whole liturgy is on there. And so we're up to about 108 a week at BCP, which is not our normal BCP.
David and Francis and Liz, what has been your greatest learning?
We've learnt by trying things that are more complicated to do, that it probably takes too much time, and also the skills wouldn't necessarily be transferable. So I think our website is based on a standard web hosting service. The Wix web hosting service is what we use. So there are plenty of tools available for learning how to use that. We could transfer the basic skills, and of course some of the things, individual items that we've learnt to put together, like anthems with choir members recording individual parts and then sewing them all together and putting them into a PowerPoint presentation to make something visual, takes quite a lot of effort and learning how to do it. But of course it's not essential. One can always just put in a YouTube hymn instead if you haven't got the skills available to do that at the time. So yes, we've been pragmatic about it. We don't try and bite off more than we can chew.
I think the thing I've learned most, I think, would be that lots of people are really happy to do a reading or contribute something to the online service, who would be pretty frightened if you asked them to do it in real life church. So some people who are right on the fringe of stuff in the village, really happy to contribute, and it's great to tap into that. And they're more willing than you think, actually. It's not difficult getting people.
I think another thing to say that's, I'm sure, common experience right across the room here is that we're getting a new congregation. So we are still open for worship on Sundays, and our core congregation are coming. I mean, it's a remarkable and wonderful thing that we are able to worship together. And those people are often picking up the online service as well. But in addition to them, we've got about 50 other people who are regularly, or at least it may be the same people regularly, or it's a similar number every week, participating in the online service. So we're going to try and find out a little bit more about them, who they are, and also lead them on and maybe encourage them to join us for some other things, perhaps through Lent, or indeed, other forms of worship and so on. We've also launched a monthly mindfulness session on Zoom, and that has attracted a small number to the live event, and it's mediated by a qualified and very experienced Christian mindfulness practitioner. But I just recently started to record the meditation and readings part of it and a bit of the music and put those up online, and that's reaching 3 times more people. So it's very interesting, this whole world of who we are engaging with out there, or who rather is engaging with us. It's an active two-way thing. So there's lots to learn.
That's amazing, and it's great to know that you're reaching further and you're knowing who your audience is as well, because that's really important to know what to give them, I guess. And you've got quite a lot of things in the pipeline that you seem to be getting ready for and trying out. Becky and Simon, have you got a lot of stuff that you've got preparing for in the pipeline that we can look forward to?
We are back online pre-recorded at the moment. We've opted not to continue the services in church during lockdown. When we're back in and starting to move forwards a bit in the hope that comes soon, we've realised that actually live streaming it and having it available for those who don't feel safe to come back into church just yet is really important. And we'd quite like to be able to step forwards from using somebody's phone and being reliant on that to having a camera that lives in church that is a decent quality but connects nicely. The joy of using a phone is that it all connects wirelessly. A lot of the cameras I've been coming across want to be wired in, and from a practical point of view in our church, that's not so easy. So that's my next step, but I'm not quite sure when we're going to reach it.
So here, this is from the Church Times recently, and some of you may have seen this. Hopefully you've got an image there of a priest with his cassock and everything, yeah. And it's very interesting that this is where we started, particularly one of our services, which we felt was more outreach orientated. But actually, to critique this, I think this was meant to be fun, but what this shows is us doing what we do well, but online in the same guise and same format. And you might speak all the different languages in the world, but are you really going to communicate with the next generation and the generation that haven't engaged with church? So what we've taken and said, okay, how do we change this, but stay true to the gospel of Christ? And we're working on a model that says, do we want to go back to old normal? Do we want to simulate, basically do something called hybrid, which is you broadcast what you currently do, or do we want to move to the end, which is called digital disciple, which means to engage with people who we don't currently engage with? And that's where we're trying to head next. So in our pipeline, it's the idea of actually taking what we're doing and taking it much further, if we can do that.
That's really exciting. And I think there's so much more that we could dig into. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, and Emma is going to jump in and take over, and we're going to look at, how you engage the 5 to 95-year-olds and all the different varieties of people you have in between. We'll have a little chance for questions at the end, but perhaps we'll do another one of these. I think there's a lot more to chat about.
Lovely, thank you, Amy. One of the questions that I kind of keep coming back to is that when we were getting church on telly on a Sunday morning, what is actually happening in households whilst church is on TV? Who's actually watching? Who's engaging? What are the people who are not engaging actually doing? And if we're kind of aiming our content at one particular age group, say adults, and if there are children or teenagers or non-Christian spouses in the house, what are they actually doing? And how can we make the most of that missional opportunity that on a Sunday morning, you've got a whole household potentially who you could be speaking to and reaching? Now that's quite a tough question, but I've kind of been looking around and seen some people who've been attempting to kind of answer that question and try some things. The first person I caught up with was Sarah Rowden, who's the Director of Youth and Children's Ministry, to get her title right, at Wonersh. Now, she's not able to be here tonight, but I recorded a bit of an interview with her, which I think Amy's going to play for us now.
So I'm Sarah Rowden, and I'm the Director of Youth and Children's Ministries at Wonersh Church, which is a little village church just south of Guildford, but we are quite ambitious. So we've had a thriving children's and youth ministry for many years, and I was really blessed to inherit it 6 years ago, and we've been carrying on. And really our driving force behind everything we do is that we want children and young people to have fun in God. We want to make disciples and we want to grow leaders. So everything we're trying to do sort of fits under that vision statement.
Fantastic. So can you just tell us what technology, what platform you've chosen to use and why you made that decision?
Yes, so Big Worship is our family service, effectively. And it started out, we thought about, could we do an offering for children? We have quite a traditional Sunday school model that operates when we're not in lockdown, and that's led by a team of leaders. And then what we had developed was a sort of monthly gathering all of those age groups together for a big worship. And it was a praise party, which happened once a month in person. sort of a version of messy church, I would say. And often more of our fringe families would come along to that, parents get involved, not very keen on leaving their children with strangers or in an unknown environment. So it became this monthly thing on a Sunday morning that could welcome in all sorts of different people who we wouldn't necessarily see throughout the rest of the month. Lockdown hit, and in trying to work out what our priority of how we spend our energy would be, we realised actually the connections we've built with these families who maybe we only see once a month, they are perhaps baptism families, they're families we connected with through school, but they're not necessarily our core church families. That was really important. So we wanted to find a way that we could replicate some form of big worship online, have something that was slightly interactive, but also recognise that the families we're connecting with may not want to have the strict routine of having to sit down and log in to a Zoom meeting or specific time where they've got to be seen to be there at the right time. So having the flexibility to enable families to tune in when it suits them, around homeschooling, around trying to get out for a bit of fresh air, dependent on the weather, that was a real key factor in how we chose to use YouTube as opposed to doing a Zoom gathering. And we also felt that for the families we're really hoping to keep a connection with, actually for some of them, it was really intimidating to log into Zoom and not know who were the faces they were going to be confronted with, not know if there was going to be anybody else there or if they were going to be the only person, and then they're kind of stuck and they've got to talk to me. And actually having it on YouTube gave a little bit of a barrier buffer zone for them to dip in, to participate, because we do make it very interactive. But they also could have a little bit of autonomy in when they watched, how much they joined in. There was no expectation, there was no demand from us on how they had to participate and how they had to watch and join in as a family. And actually we've found that has worked for our fringe families really well, but also our core church families who've really appreciated the fact that in the last year, their family schedule and routine has been sometimes really strict and well adhered to, and sometimes all over the place. And what we're able to do is maintain a connection with them, because they can watch every week, or they can wait for a few weeks and binge watch all in a rainy afternoon. They can dip into it midweek. They can watch with a parent. They could leave the kids to watch on their own. There's a whole host of different things and ways in which family can connect. And that's enabled us to sort of be all things to all people through one medium, which as a small team has been really vital for us to achieve. What we've picked up is that actually families are watching together. They're not sitting the kids in front of the TV to do church. They are enjoying the fact that they can come together, and actually there's something for them to share as a family. It is a moment when they can talk about faith as a family. We like to put in little conversation starters or little prayer activities where we hand the baton to them. So for example, we're going to thank God today, and then the screen will show a number of different things you might like to thank God for, and as a family you choose which one you're going to finish the sentence with. And it means that we have the opportunity for parents and children to interact and to grow in faith together. We do it a little bit like a Disney movie. So Disney is pitched obviously at children, it's a children's film, but there are always these underlying jokes, these little innuendos, these little things that are above the children's heads which keep the parents entertained. So when the next Disney picture comes out, the parents are like, actually, yeah, the last one was quite fun. So they're going to take their kids to a kids movie again, rather than it being so low pitched that the parents and the older children get bored quite easily. So we've learnt that, and we've learnt that actually having a really broad age range that we're trying to cater to is a strength as well as a hindrance and a challenge, because it means that we can actually go deeper in some areas, which enables our older children, our younger teens and our parents to really grapple with some quite challenging questions together, whilst also really young children have the bright colours and the fun and the activity that keeps their engagement, and the story can be shared by everybody. We try and have a variety of stuff and a variety each week. there's still a pattern that runs through it all. There's common elements that everyone expects and you look forward to, but there's also enough variety that keeps people engaged and hooked in at different ages. And the other thing we've learned is how people are watching this. And this has been a real huge sort of revelation moment for me in terms of casting a view already for what the new normal might look like at the end of all of this. We've, as I said earlier, had a model of standard classical Sunday school, Sunday morning kids activities. What we found with when we schedule our YouTube video and how people are watching it is that our families are not all watching together on a Sunday morning. They are watching at different times of the day. Most often, they're watching the afternoon or early evening. Most often, they will maybe watch 2 or 3 in a go. And we're also finding that we have families watching it again and again. And that's often because they've started watching it and they've not had time to finish it and they come back and watch it. Or that might be that one parent has watched it with the kids and then actually the other parent wants to watch it with the kids as well. So how we take that forward as a learning point, it's been really interesting. It's a point of kind of discussion and ongoing reflection for us, because we find that actually our classical Sunday school model, if we're just to replicate that online, it's really inaccessible for families now, even though it's online. What they need is more flexibility. They need the option to be able to dip in. They need different times. They need to be able to pause it when it's appropriate, and they need to be able to come back to something later. And they need something that once they finish watching it, there's something to take away. And what they are really appreciating is that we accompany all of the big worships with something they can go away with as a family. They can look at a Bible verse together. There's a worksheet they could do, or there's a craft pack that comes with it that they can dip into. So it's that sense of continuing the conversation. So yeah, it's an ongoing learning process, and I hope we'll continue to improve.
Sarah was doing a pre-recorded YouTube service for families that for them was working really, really well. I've got 3 people here this evening who are just going to share a bit about what they're doing, because they're also aiming at families but are doing things that are quite different. So let's go to Kathy first. Kathy Blair, who's the incumbent at St Mary's, Walton-on-Thames. And I went with my family to Kathy's service on Sunday morning, and it was great. It even dragged my children away from the window and stopped them watching the snow and got them engaged in what she was doing. So Kathy, do you just want to tell us a bit about what you're doing?
Yeah, hi everyone, we're at Walton-on-Thames, and we had a very large Sunday school, a lot of children under 5 here, and a once a month all-age service, and then lockdown struck, and we wanted to keep in contact with all of these families. But we realized that actually we asked the question about how do we disciple whole families together, because actually a lot of these families are not that, haven't been in church that long. And so there's an opportunity here for us to think about how we can disciple the whole family. So we decided to try to put our once a month all age service onto a Zoom so that families could still link with each other, they could still interact with each other and see each other on Zoom. I don't think we had heard anyone tell us it was difficult, so we just did it really. We've got a lot better, and I think the things that we've learned is that there's opportunity for participation. People are in their homes, and so you can say, right, now go and fetch a piece of fruit. So there's often a go fetch spot in the Zoom service, so they need to go and fetch a piece of fruit, or there's sometimes opportunity to draw a picture or whatever. We also ask questions, so we can tell a Bible story and then ask questions, and children can put their hands up and answer. Sometimes we ask a variety of questions to different ages. So we'll ask a question, okay, you can answer this question if you're 4 or below. You can answer this question if you're 8 and above. So it engages different children in different ways. We also have fallen into starting and finishing the service with a welcome from a child and a final prayer by a child as well. We'll ask a different adult or teenager to read the story each week. So you've got different things happening from different screens, so it's not all LED, it's not all coming from one place. We have our musician who plays the piano in his home, and his daughter, who is 4, she plays the piano as well, along with him, with the words put in the chat, and the rest of us do actions. So it's all very participative. It's anything can happen. It's quite messy in terms of you can't exactly tell what's going to happen, but that's a lot of the fun of it. And we've had actually a much more regular congregation at the all-age service than we did in real church. I think that's because of lockdown. People are around much more, but it's really been nice because we've felt we've got to know each other a bit, and it's lovely. You can see each other's names on the screen, so you know who people are. We've got more people involved in leading the service. It started with just me, but there's a team of 5 or 6 of us now who take it in turns, which gives them a bit more variety, which is nice. And I think one of the things is that we're always mindful that we are trying to model something which they can then do in their own homes. So when it comes to the prayer time, we encourage the families to, okay, now this is what we're going to pray for today. All of the family, choose somebody who you want to pray for. You pray at home, and then I'll pray on behalf of us, or whatever it is. Light a candle. Now all of you, everyone go and light a candle and think about this or that or the other. So we're inviting them to start doing something in their family which maybe they weren't doing before. We've tried online recorded bedtime stories. We do a toddler praise also by Zoom, and those are alongside our regular recorded services in the morning, and a 7:30 contemporary Zoom service in the evening as well.
Thank you, Kathy. That was great, and we thoroughly enjoyed it on Sunday. And I think that point of kind of modelling what you hope, well, what you know is then going to happen in the homes is really great, and all that interactivity. Thank you. That's great. Bronwyn, who's the Children and Families worker at Bisley and West End, is doing something different again, and she's got a bit of a sort of a hybrid, messy, churchy thing going. Bronwyn, do you want to tell us what you're doing?
So our messy service used to be a bit more of a traditional messy service with lots of movement and lots of crafts and things like that. And obviously we can't share things now. So I've tried to find a way to make it still accessible for the children. So we've used various different Bible readings throughout the messy services I've done. We've used the rhyming Bible a couple of times just so that it brings a different angle, and I pre-pack craft activities for the children to take away. So when they arrive, there's an envelope in their pew and they can take that away and build it at home. And I've sort of tried to encourage them to send me pictures of what they've made, or show me what they've done. We started with pre-recorded services, but it was just so much work, all the editing and putting it in, that we've gone to trying live streaming on Facebook Live. And so far, fingers crossed, it's working okay. So we try and include the congregation that we've got watching. So we've done active sort of action prayers and things, and, sort of bit question there. I did a treasure hunt at the weekend, and so we panned around the church looking under the pews that people were sitting on. There were stars that they had to follow around, and just tried to include people at home as well as being in church. We chose to be in church because we asked our families and they said they wanted to be there. They wanted to get out of the house, and they wanted to be with people that were worshipping in a way that they were used to. So that's what we've done.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Bronwyn. And getting that hybrid model, I think, is great. So people in church have got their packs and people at home have got their packs. And the Facebook Live seems to kind of bring that together.
Yeah, I put all the how to do it on our website, so people can download it in a PDF form if they can't get to church to pick up their craft pack.
Brilliant. And have you got any kind of things you've learnt?
Yeah, teenagers don't like being on camera.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. Brilliant, thank you, Bronwyn. And finally, we've got Gabrielle Clark, who's the Young People's Minister at St Nicholas in Cranley. And what you're doing has kind of evolved a bit over time, hasn't it? Do you want to tell us what you've been doing, Gabrielle?
Yes, I can. So hello, I'm Gabrielle. Yeah, so what we've been doing is really like it's changed over time, and we've adapted it and kind of changed it to fit what we want. It's kind of interesting hearing what Bronwyn said about your church, because you were saying you asked your families and they said they wanted to be in church, whereas where we're at, we asked our families and they said no, we don't want to risk it. So it really does show that where you are and where your context is can change so much, and so we all have different people and people with different preferences and stuff like that. But anyway, so we've over time sort of ended up with Zoom. That's what we do. So we sort of have all age, but sort of not. So aside from our normal sort of, there's a live streamed service, which is actually in church, but not that many people are going at the moment for obvious reasons, which is much more traditional. But then for our all age, for our families and our all age service, we do that on Zoom at 10 AM on Sunday mornings. And then we also have children's church at 11:15 AM on Sunday mornings. So they're right after each other, which means that the children can sort of join after their parents have. But there are some more older children who will come to both. So they tend to sort of either pop in and out, or they'll join the whole service at 10 AM with their parents, and then they'll come to children's church as well. So it's a bit of a mix, really. But with children's church, we send crafts to all of the children. So I'm very lucky to have some amazing volunteers who are very happy to drop them round to the parents' houses, and they also have sweets in them, so the children are very happy. And then at 10 AM as well, we have our Zoom all age service. So it's really nice to be able to be interactive. I think that's the biggest reason why we're doing it on Zoom. The families really like to be able to see each other's faces. When we pray together in a very interactive way. We use Breakout Rooms, which has really been an amazing experience, because normally when we were doing prayer in normal church service, someone would go up the front and read out prayers and everyone would listen, whereas this is much more praying together and asking, and it's been really nice seeing people asking each other for prayer requests for specific situations, and then also being able to hear the prayers being answered, because we're able to ask each other about the things we've been praying about. So that's been really nice. So yeah, and something else I've learned is that it's been really interesting seeing the young people, and especially the teenagers, getting involved. I guess one of the things that's been really crazy about this whole situation is that we've been building everything from the ground up after lockdown happened. So it's been really interesting seeing the young people kind of seeing this space for creativity and wanting to get involved. And especially for us, we only have four teenagers, which isn't very many. So it's been really exciting to kind of see them kind of come into themselves a bit. They've asked to have take charge of some services. A couple of them even asked to preach. One of them did a choreographed dance routine, which was totally her own idea and very exciting. So that's something that's been interesting. I think, as a couple of you have already said, I think one of the biggest learning experiences from this whole thing has been keep it sustainable and keep it simple. So for example, our Zoom service, it's only 35 to 40 minutes long. We only have 2 songs as opposed to the normal 5 that we would have in a church service. I think Zoom fatigue is a real thing. So trying not to make it go on for too long. Simple things like freebibleimages.org is one of my favorite things. So if there's a Bible story, putting up the pictures in the PowerPoint with the words to the passage so that people can read along but also watch the pictures. That's been surprisingly well received by adults as well as children.
Thank you, Gabrielle. That's really great to kind of hear how you sort of journeyed with Zoom and ended up with what you've got. And can you put a link to Free Bible Images in the chat? Because if nobody's heard of it, it's absolutely brilliant and you need to make a note of this. But thank you, Gabrielle, Kathy and Bronwyn. And am I handing back over to Amy?
We did say about doing some Q&A. I believe there have been some questions in the chat.
Sue referenced, do all of these churches have a designated children and families worker? So I think, you know, it's a key thing. Do they need somebody that's specifically focused on this to really engage it in the community?
Shall I take that one?
Yes.
Some churches do and some don't. Generally, churches employ somebody once they've developed their family's work to sort of a certain level that it needs that to sustain it. So certainly you don't need a dedicated worker to begin engaging with families. And if you begin to grow that ministry, then you may feel that you need to then employ somebody to sustain it. But certainly, I don't think, Kathy, you've got somebody at the moment, have you? And you've been doing this. No, Kathy hasn't got anybody. So some churches do and some don't, but that shouldn't stop you.
Can someone share a little bit more what live streaming entails?
So for us, live streaming involves setting up a camera at a fixed point in the church that shows the majority of the front of the church where people are standing to speak, but doesn't show who's sat in the congregation. It then involves feeding the input from that camera and the input from the microphones that people would be using anyway, feeding those into YouTube, which then streams whatever's happening in the building out onto the internet.
I think one of the things that we did ordinations before Christmas.
October,
wow, time has flown. And we streamed from 7 different services onto the Diocesan YouTube channel. And each church was using different equipment and different systems. So we had one church that was used to doing Zoom, and we took from Zoom and pushed through onto YouTube. We had Becky with a phone that came through, and then we had a couple of other churches that have heavily invested in equipment and technology and know things that are far beyond what I can remember at this point in time. So people can do all sorts of different things, and yeah, it could be at any level really, but it, you know, something that produces an image and something that does sound, and then choosing some way to get it online is kind of where people start.
Andrew's just put in the chat that they've done a similar thing but streamed it onto Facebook rather than onto YouTube. And actually, when we did our APCM in church, the very, very delayed APCM, we streamed that, live streamed that, but streamed it into Zoom so that we could manage who was seeing that, but it was a live stream of what was happening in the building.
There are some YouTube videos as well that really go into detail and show you exactly what button to press on and where. Yeah, so just do a quick search on YouTube and some will come up that are really helpful. And the Digital Labs team from the national team have some brilliant blogs as well that have some quick how-to guides on live streaming, and they're putting on webinars as well.
Amy, we made a couple of mistakes, which learn from our mistakes with live stream. We were pre-recording. One of the reasons we moved away from pre-record was because of Black Lives Matter, because we'd pre-recorded on the Wednesday. If you remember back in the summer, Black Lives Matter. So we were out of sync, as it were, and we missed it, which was very offensive to some of our congregation. So we moved to live stream. Our mistakes are, as Becky probably knows and others, live stream is 17 seconds behind. It's not live. It's never live. So the minute you try and do anything interactive, you're 17 seconds behind everybody watching you at home. It's the first thing that we discovered. The second thing is you have to be careful of your content, because you can't control content. And if you've got a wayward preacher in your congregation, just be very careful. So we actually had to take a couple of our live streams down. And thirdly, in terms of music and video content, YouTube work on the basis that you get 3 strikes on a pre-record, but you get no strikes on a live stream. So if you make a mistake and infringe a copyright image on Google or something in a sermon, you're in danger of being removed within seconds. So it's just about content management. So there are 3 mistakes. You can tell we've made at least 2 of those.
A real thank you today, actually, to all of our panelists. What's really clear is that there are so many different ways of doing online worship and doing church online. It's opening doors to people that would otherwise probably never have come through the doors of a church, which is fabulous. And it is highlighting that, actually even post-pandemic, that it would be a shame to lose this missional opportunity that we've got here. And I hope that it's given you some ideas of things that you can do within your parishes. And thank you for coming together.